Thank you, Carolyn. There might be some people who disagree that all the decisions I make are that good, and or I was in someone else's best interest. Thank you. I'll tell you, as I look around this room this morning, I am amazed at the amount of faces and the years that go with those faces in the work that we've all been doing for 26 years. And I mean that as a compliment, and I mean it because that's the infrastructure of the caring that goes on for kids out at this end of the state. It's the weathered, warm, beautiful faces that I see around this room that have been doing this work for so long. So my appreciation is to you for sticking with it for so long, that every day isn't easy. God knows, we all know that. So I just wanted to say I'm here today because I want to hear your ideas. The two folks before us made very clear this is a collective effort. This is not DCF, it's not one person. It's all of us in this room to get it right for kids. So I really do appreciate, the opportunity just to be here with you this morning and help, excuse me, to start thinking through some ideas. Who am I guess, is always a little bit of a question because it focuses the work we do. And who am I is one of 11 children from an Irish Catholic family. And it's important because it grounds me in the work that I do, and it grounds me in what I want for kids. Maybe not fish every Friday night, but it grounds me in what I want for kids. And it really impacts how we do our work and who we are. There's points in our life where we all look at things and things happen, and we kind of go to muscle memory. We kind of go back to what just comes naturally. We don't think it through, we just do it. One of the most horrific, I think now in terms of one of the most horrific days in our history, which was 9/11. And not to reference that lightly, but what did we all do that day? I know exactly what I did. I was at work and I checked on my staff. I took care of what we had to take care of that day. I got out and I called my mom. How was she? Was she okay? Was she upset? I talked with her because that's what all good Irish Catholic sons do. You call your mom. Then I went to church with my wife, and I looked around at all the people that I leaned on and cared about. And what I realized at the time was I had that structure. I didn't have to think about it. I went right into it, right into muscle memory about what did I do on a dark day. Our kids don't deserve any less. I don't care whether it's us working hard to strengthen their birth family. I don't know whether it's us working hard to strengthen their extended family, or whether it's us helping create a family where that's necessary. Our kids don't deserve any less. The reality is, we haven't always given that to them. It's not from lack of effort. It isn't from lack of caring from all the people in the room. Someone referenced the Re-Envisioning foster care this morning, and for people in child protective services, that's a really hard thing to hear, right? Child protective services is a calling. We don't get into it for the money. We don't get into it for those kinds of rewards, right? You get into it because it's part of who you are. And so when people criticize and say you're not doing it well, or criticize the work that you do, or show the failures, which there will always be some, as much as it breaks all of our hearts, there will always be some. You feel like maybe they don't celebrate enough of the success. And so it's very personal, and so people take it very personally, and they feel like they're being personally criticized, not professionally criticized. And I think there's only one answer to that. Get over it. Open the door, extend the conversation to more people. And I think we've tried to do that in the last 7 years. I think we've made a lot of efforts to try and engage the community in different ways. Area offices with area boards, more community involvement, better collaborations. I'm going to talk about some of those collaborations, but I think people have really worked hard to try and do those things. And I think we've had some good preliminary results from that. I think we're an agency, I think, that's moving in the right direction. Right now, any conversation kind of about DCF has to have a little bit of conversation in the bigger context, which is certainly system reform, change, the things that are going on. First, Carolyn referenced one of the changes, just for us here in Western Mass, which is, we're not just Western Mass anymore. We're, I like to call us the Western Territory. We went from having 5 area offices, which most of you know would have been our Springfield, Holyoke, Robert Van Wert Center, Greenfield, and Pittsfield offices. We went from 5 to 9. I developed PTSD, which I tell everyone. I can go buy a map, and I can pick 495 out from 100 yards, because that is the border for our new region. Everything to the left of 495 is now Western Mass. So we are now in charge of 9 area offices, covering about 50% of the state's geography and about 40% of the state's caseload. So that was the good news, right? Yeah. And it's born out of a lot of things. Some system change, but some merely budget-driven issues. I mean, the reality is, in this infrastructure, in this time, the administrative section of our budget got hit particularly hard, which, as hard as an administrator is to say, I'm more okay with than not, because the reality is that means it hit other things less. It hit kids less. It hit social workers out in the field sitting with kids and parents and families less. But it hit administrators hard. So we restructured, and what you'll hear now are some new terms. Directors of areas. Has anyone heard that one yet? Directors of areas. Each area director that used to have 1 office now has 2. So they are overseeing 2 offices. One of the good outcomes, I think, very positive outcomes, is that we've also identified a step lower by identifying in each area office what we're calling an ACM, or an area clinical manager. And it's really about putting a manager on the floor in the office in charge of the day-to-day clinical operation, taking them out of the administrative stuff, taking them out of those things, and giving that to an area clinical manager whose day-to-day job really is about making sure that we're making the right decisions, that there's someone there whose time and attention is devoted to the clinical conversations that need to happen, that sometimes aren't convenient time-wise, sometimes are not easy to have, but that someone is there making sure and then trying to impact practice. So I just wanted to mention that change because I think it is an important one. A couple of the other things that I wanted to talk about were just the issue of pilot versus systems change. We've heard a lot about laws that have changed recently, and the department needs to do this, and then federal laws that have changed for reporting requirements, and all kinds of things that have changed. And as you react to those changes, you tend to put up pilots, and some work really well, and some don't work as well. But one of the hardest things is moving those pilots to scale. How do you take what's successful in a pilot and make it an agency part of the fabric of the work? And that's difficult. And so I think we're in that process right now in a lot of areas. I did want to take a couple of minutes and talk about a couple of things that I think are going very well for our families. And one of the questions will be how to take what's going well from these things and integrate them into full-scale work across the department, across the state. So one of the first things would be family group conferencing and family find. This is a model that we've kind of been working on for a few years, and really it's about identifying and pulling out a few staff from around the region, attaching one at least in every office. And their primary job is to support staff both directly and indirectly in developing better skills to connect with families, to help identify where the family's not involved, and to problem solve around that. So the family group conference folks are doing some kind of mediation work, they're doing some kind of home finding work, but what they're doing is they're connecting in offices to say, this is a priority of your work. So if a family resource supervisor, for instance, is doing placements today, that family group conferencing person should be connecting with that family resource supervisor to say, hey, these 4 kids, they went into unrestricted foster care. Unrestricted foster care meaning not extended family or someone this child knew. And the question becomes, why? Not a value judgment that they did something wrong, but why? Did we talk to family? Did we try and find family? Is it in process but just can't happen yet? but somebody really to push the conversation in a more formal way rather than an informal way, because we all know the more informal the process, the more likely it is to fall between the cracks. So the more things we begin to help folks do that, and again, when I say fall between the cracks, it isn't, again, from lack of effort. These people who are doing this job come in the morning and leave at night with the same kind of stamina that's just amazing to me. They come in and work all day long looking at the most difficult situations, coming up with the best answers they can in a difficult environment. So I always walk that fence between saying we want to do innovation and we want to do change, but I really want to be supportive and recognize the truly outstanding work that people who are in this field do, and they don't hear often enough.